First of all, welcome to the channel and thank you for stopping by. When time permits, please consider subscribing. I would greatly appreciate it. What I have here is the Carpuride W502, and I've been using this in place of my traditional Garmin, mostly because I'm not a huge fan of the Garmin. It really doesn't find any place you put into it, as well as Google Maps does. And with the Carpuride, I'm able to just use Google Maps. It's the best map software in the world. If you want to find an address, if you want to find a place or a place of interest, Google will get you there. And thanks to Angroid Auto, I can use the Carpuride up on my bike while keeping my phone put away. Now, with the exception of when my phone needed to be hard reset, and I realized that while testing headsets and the Carpuride W502 has been fantastic. Gets me where I'm going. I am still getting used to the fact that while Garmin is great at tracks, I'm now using Gaia on my phone through the Carpuride, and that's been less than ideal simply because I'm not that experienced with it, but I'm getting better. However, the 502, as useful as it's been, is going to get put aside for a little while, and that's because we now have the Carpuride W603. This has several improvements, one of which is the screen, and the second is it has a feature that the 502 and the 702 simply don't have, and that is front and rear cameras. As someone who unfortunately has to take the highway to the locations I want to start riding off-road, gravel, dirt, etc., I'm on the highway a lot, and I'm always wondering where people are. This is going to give me a better idea as I can see out the back of the bike from the camera. And importantly, if I am, heaven forbid, in some sort of accident, this is going to record what happened. And that might be valuable to me, my family, or at the very least, the insurance company. So let's take a look at what the W603 looks like out of the box. And here we have the unit. It is thick. It is somewhat heavy, and similar to the other Carpurides, it comes with the ball mount. The screen is quite nice. Let's do a quick comparison. This is the 5-inch unit, and it is a 16:9. This looks more of a 21:9, similar to a cell phone. Oh, it's not actually as wide as I thought. I was expecting it to be significantly wider than the 502, but honestly, it's not. It is significantly heavier, though. It's not going to take up too much extra space. Now, let's get to what's different about this unit. Primarily is we have front channel camera, rear channel camera, and while these are all touchscreen and work remarkably well, surprisingly, even with my Alpine Stars gloves, which hate everything, this comes with, and I will certainly be using, handlebar controls, provided, of course, I find room for the handlebar controls. But we have power, we have phone, we have the home button. Interestingly, the other two units, the 500 series and the 700 series, both allow you to use USB if you would like to, which I found kind of convenient. I was told that this one specifically must go to the battery. Now, I'm expecting you could probably just run this to any hot wire that you wanted to, but for testing purposes, I'm going to follow the instructions and I will wire this directly to the battery. Later on, we'll put it into one of the accessory ports and give it a shot. Unfortunately, what that means is I can't power this up and get a look at it yet, as I do not have a 12-volt battery here in the office. Now, what else do we have? I guess what we should look at first is what makes this unit very special, and that is the cameras. Looks like we have 3M tape to stick this to a about 1.5 inches of flat plastic. I'm sure I'll be able to find that on the KTM. Kind of heavy. If you don't already have a mount on your bike, it is going to come with one. I'm sure I'll find the other parts for that later. An extension, should you need that for probably the rear camera. And yeah, here we go. All of the bits and bobs to make this work. Kind of surprised that they're not attached to it already, but hey, they're in there and that's what's important. And of course we have our front camera. They are labeled so you know which one should be which. And that's it. Now, this is the Carpuride manual, and I hate to admit it, I required the manual to get the W502 working properly. So I would take a few minutes to absolutely read the manual before jumping into it. The Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth connection, it reads like if you do them in the correct order, things work better. So don't just willy-nilly try to set it up yourself unless you're incredibly talented, and I'm not. So I'm going to recommend everybody goes ahead and takes a look at the manual first. Carpuride has excellent photos, very, very detailed, as you can see here. Okay, it's actually a couple of days later. It took me a little while to get the time to install it. All told, it took about 15 minutes to install it, roughly. That is to get the cameras on, to make sure everything worked. Pairing my phone was 30 seconds, worked great. However, after that, I had to spend about an hour and a half getting everything connected as cleanly as I could. And the reason for that is they give you at Carpuride all the cable you could ever need lengthwise. I mean, I think you could run this for a significantly longer bike than my 790 Adventure. And they even have an extension if you need it for the cameras, which I did not have to use. But let's just take a look at some of the install. Now, up here is somewhat clean, as long as we ignore some of it. We've got 4 cables coming out. And that is for camera front, camera rear, power, and to the controller. Unfortunately, they give you a lot, I mean a lot of wire for everything. Everywhere I've run this is the front camera, which we have right there. Every place has spare cables. There's just no way around it. This is all coming down. These right here are somewhat of a problem. They're very inflexible. They're about 4 inches long when they're connected together. And I had to make an active effort to not kink any of those. Coming down, coming up. And this goes to our camera in the back. Might as well get the cameras out of the way. That mounted nicely. Very satisfied with that. This is worth noting. This comes with a ground, a power, and an accessory. It says ACC right on it. Now in the instructions it tells you to run both of these to the battery. I think most people are not going to want to do that. Most people will run the yellow to the battery, and then they will run the accessory to a keyed accessory port. However, I did decide to do it this way. And I didn't do it that way because the instructions said to. I did it that way because if it's on the keyed port, every single time I turn off the key, the screen would go off. And when I turn the key back on, my phone would have to reconnect Bluetooth, maps, everything. And if I'm just stopping to chat with my friends for a few minutes, I don't want my phone, which I know has a history of Bluetooth connection issues, having to do that. So for now, I've gone ahead and put it directly to the battery, and I'm using the on-off switch on the controller, which we'll show you in a moment. If you don't have problems with your darn Samsung phone doing Bluetooth connections, put it on an accessory port, and you can guarantee there'll never be any kind of drain. The way I have it set up, it does have a parasitic draw so that the controller can turn the unit on. I have a lithium battery, I'm not worried about it, but do keep that in mind. If you have a lead acid battery, I think the draw on this is kind of high for that. Now, before we get riding, let's take a look. This is the multifunction button. Turns it on, turns it off, and makes some changes to the camera. This is for picking up calls. Interestingly, this works for iPhone, but not my Android. And the home button. Let's see how long it takes the unit to come up. The operating system is very similar to what I've seen on the other Carpurides. The difference being this screen is just awesome. Let's see if I can hold that there. There's me. So we can see behind us. And over here, if we hit this button, it shows us a great rear view. We'll see that later on. Well, if my helmet camera goes down far enough, you can see what's behind you, quite a bit of it. It's absolutely awesome. Now, if this was an iPhone and I got a call, I could hit this and pick it up. But what it does now is it takes a photo of what the camera is grabbing. It does not ever pick up. I can go right ahead and there's my music, there's my maps. It is, at the end of the day, like all of these devices, an Apple CarPlay and an Android Auto. There are pluses to that and there are minuses to that. So be wary. You either like them or you don't. Personally, I'm really warming up to Android Auto.